From the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
We're very privileged to have on our program today the Honorable Cecil Andrus, the Governor of the great state of Idaho. Governor Andrus has been with us a number of times over the 22 years of this program, and as always, Governor, it's a pleasure to have you here, and you've been most generous with your time to report to the people in our viewing audience about what's going on in the state of Idaho, and in your case, of course, nationally too, with the background you have. For any viewer who might not know the background of our distinguished guest, Governor Andrus has been in politics a long time. He served in the Idaho State Senate from North Idaho and certainly is one of the people of North Idaho. In 1970, he was elected governor of the state of Idaho. He was reelected in 1974. And halfway through his second term, Jimmy Carter was elected President of the United States, and he resigned to become the Secretary of Interior. During his tenure as Secretary of Interior, Time magazine listed Mr. Andrus as one of the three top members of the cabinet during the Carter administration. Following that term, he returned to Idaho, and he was elected governor again in 1986 and re-elected in 1990. In fact, Cecil Andrus is the only person to ever be elected governor of the state of Idaho 4 times. There are many other things we could say about our distinguished guest, but we want to leave time for questions from our panel. Governor, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Tony, and to you and your panel. It's a pleasure to be back. It's like old home week when you come to North Idaho. As you pointed out, I did serve 4 terms as a state senator from North Idaho, and yes, this is home.
And I'm pleased to have 3 members of the panel today to join me in questioning the governor. First of all is Janelle Burke, who is a regular panelist and attorney in the state of Idaho. Next to her is Steve Schenck, who is the Dean of College Relations and Development at North Idaho College. And next to him as a visiting panel member is Dr. Robert Bennett, the president of North Idaho College. And I shall ask Janelle to commence the questioning.
Governor Andrus, you're a person who gets around the state of Idaho a great deal, and you're very much in tune with what people think and what's happening within the state. One of the major national issues right now is health care. What is the state of Idaho doing about health care, and what do you think the people of Idaho want the state to do?
It's a good question, and first of all, the people of the state of Idaho that have health care supplied by the taxpayer or their employer or somebody else don't want us to do anything. But those people that are out there in dire needs, we recognize something has to be done. We don't know what the national program will end up being, what it'll look like. I think it's safe to say it will not be as President Clinton has proposed it, but there will be a compromise between the Congress and the administration, and something will come out. So what are we doing in the interim? At least we've recommended to this legislative session that they provide Idaho with a health commission so that we will be in a position to remove the antitrust problems that people seem to hide behind. I don't agree. You would know better than I whether they're really there, but we'll take care of that. Then we will be in a position to have an established commission to implement the national program in with ours. We provide health care for Medicaid for the people who are low income. The indigent rolls at the county level take care of those people who are indigent, and we pay for those bills paid for by the property tax at the local level. So you have the indigents, and then you have the low income, and then you have those employees of the state of Idaho, like some of us here today. We have a pretty good program here at the top end of the employers around the state to make it available to some people. But there's a group between there, about 160,000 Idahoans that have been falling through the cracks. They are people who are self-employed, or they work for a small business person who cannot make health care available to their employees, and they just simply have to choose between health care or the grocery bill. And so then when a calamity strikes, a child is injured in an accident or an illness in a family comes about, these people who have tried to stay off of welfare, who have worked to pay their own bills, find themselves forced into bankruptcy in order to refuse or unable to pay their bills. I have proposed that the medically needy program help those people. There's a cap on income, there's pay down benefits, they have to be reestablished as eligible for it on a monthly basis instead of just having a card in your pocket. The protection's there. So I think we are moving in the right direction.
Steve Sheen.
Governor Andrus, I know you're well aware that in some parts of the state, here in North Idaho and in Ada County in particular, property tax values are rising dramatically. And I also know that you're aware that there are some proposals being discussed at the state level now about how to deal with that. Would you care to share with us your view of those various proposals?
I don't know how much time we have in the program. If I went into all the intricacies of that, we'd run out of time. Just let me say, well, Ron Rankin is a known individual in this area of the state of Idaho. I've never, as a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever supported Ron Rankin in anything. But his proposal, what was it, 2 years ago, Tony, that he had the proposal that failed. I opposed it then. I am not supporting it now, but he's picking up strength every single day because of what you pointed out, that the escalation of the property values has been so great that the people get their tax bill and they look at it and they say, well, gee whiz, they said they didn't raise my taxes yet. Take a look at it, and it's up $300 or $100 or whatever. My home in Boise, the assessed valuation went up to where the extraction was an increase of just a few cents under 10% in 1 year. So people are faced with that, and I think you're going to see some type of an initiative pass, whether it's the one in the legislature with a 5% cap or the 1%, something will pass, I think, this year. And that will cause some limitations, but I think in the end result what it will mean is that the state will start picking up some of those services in the future with some form of additional taxation and giving property tax relief. But the local units of government, those county commissioners and city councilmen that are out there watching this program, I have to say to them that they better reduce the mill levy if the state picks up that tab in the future, and that's not what they were set to do on that indigent health care situation. I made some proposals, as you're aware, 2 years ago and then a year ago to reduce property tax. The legislature turned their back on them. So this year I said, look, I'm not going to go back and fight that battle again. If you want to look at property tax relief, we will give you the proposals and the background we've done. But I think that you will see, because of our strong economy that we have in the state now, very little will take place this year. The voters will make some kind of a move this year that will force them into doing something next year. It's long overdue, in my opinion.
Dr. Bennett.
Governor, first of all, I want to welcome you again to NIC.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I see you as a friend, and not only of myself personally, but as of this college, and I truly appreciate it. We've worked together on several things, and I think if there's going to be anything said about your record, it's going to be strengthening the economy of this state to the place that we're one of the healthiest states in the nation. One of the things we did was work a partnership where we were able to attract some new industry into this area. And I'd just like for you to comment a little bit in terms of the philosophy of the partnership of the state working with education so that we can strengthen with private industry that which is going to help perhaps alleviate some of this property tax problem.
And you haven't done too poorly here in the Permanent Building Fund projects either.
No.
But no, Mr. President, you, like your counterpart in the South and the community colleges, have been strong proponents of it and of education, and you have caused some of us to recognize your needs. With friendliness and affection, let me say, I sometimes see him coming and I said, oh, here comes the beggar again. But he does a great job. But let me point out to you that Mr. President, a strong economy provides a necessary tax base that we then take and give to the institutions of of higher learning and to the public schools. If you do not have a strong business climate in the state so that you can create the jobs, you're not going to have the necessary money to do what we have been able to do. And yes, you and I both have a long history of strong support of education, both public education and higher education, but somehow it has to be paid for.
Right.
And if you do not have a strong business climate and create the jobs, you simply are not going to have the revenue stream to pay the bills. So we zeroed in on the attraction of new industry, and you point out here, Harper's is a prime example. I made a trip to Southern California along with the people that work for us in the Department of Commerce, Jim Hawkins, who is originally from this part of the state. And we worked on it, and we've worked on smaller businesses also, and retaining those that we have. The place where, and we have an outstanding record, as you pointed out. We lead the nation in the creation of new jobs, increase in average per capita income, and the other thing. But the Silver Valley, that's the real, I want to say, a heartburn, failure, disappointment that I have, is that we have not been able to do what we would like to have done in that area. Part of it's because it's a Superfund site and financing, but the big bugaboo is the world price of precious metals. And that's silver and gold and antimony, but also the lead and zinc market. Silver is coming back, and I still say that there's a lot of silver underground up there in the valley, but we need $7, we'd like to have $9, but you need $7.50 an ounce to really put them back into the production mode, in my opinion. But so far, so good. Knock on wood, we've done well.
And congratulate you on your record.
Well, I've been around a long time. You're supposed to learn something, you know.
That's interesting. Dr. Bennett stole my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's why.
Well, he's the president of the college.
He does have that prerogative.
That's right. You're not going to complain, are you, Tony?
Oh, I don't know. Under the First Amendment, I might do so. I was reading an article on a flight back east recently, and I was really impressed. They had all 50 states, and they did show that we ranked, as you indicated, in prosperity and overall in an awful lot of states. We were fourth in the nation, and just a major comprehensive group of economic indicators, but you've covered that. Another thing that you've become really well known for around the United States recently in the last couple of years is an issue that's certainly a great issue of the 90s, and that is, what are we going to do with hazardous waste of all types, in particular nuclear waste from such things as nuclear power plants. And as the political process unfolded, it seems that Idaho was chosen as a dump site, and you certainly have a very clear record of fighting that all the way through, not only as chief executive, but through the courts. Would you bring us up to date on what the status is and how you think that will turn out?
Tony, let me say to you and to your viewing audience here that yes, this is my last year in public office, but I'm not going to disintegrate and disappear from the scene. And the nuclear waste issue is going to be one that they're going to hear from me in the future, whether I'm lecturing on your campus or somebody else's. I'm going to make them aware of that, the salmon issue, the water issue, the health and safety issues of the state. But backing up, I have to say that the issue is so complex because you have so many different levels. You have what we call the solid waste, like the landfill, the city dump, we used to call them. And then you have the toxic and hazardous waste that has to be in a secure landfill and handled separately. And heretofore, it was just the best way to get rid of solvents and toxic and hazardous waste and chemicals was to put it out on the curb with your garbage, and the truck hauled it to the local landfill. So we have some time bombs ticking out there that we don't even know today where they're located, but in the future they'll show up in the groundwater. So those are issues that we can handle and have a handle on. Then in the area of nuclear waste, you have mixed waste, then you have low-level nuclear waste, which has a shorter half-life. Then you have transuranic, which we have a lot of here in Idaho, and then you have the high-level, really hot stuff with 10,000 years to 25,000 years half-life. And the five of us sitting here today, a 25,000-year half-life, is a pretty serious situation. But keep in mind, low-level, with a half-life of several hundred years, is equally devastating to the humans' time on Earth. So where do we stand right now? You're right. They had used us as what they said, a temporary storage site, and they kept bringing it in, national security, you got to be patriotic, we have to put it here. And they promised that it was for temporary storage. Well, it became obvious to me in 1987 that it was going to be temporary for the next 1,000 years. They had selected us as a place to just dump it, and I said, whoa. And you remember, we closed the borders. We said no more, and there hasn't been, except for that comes in from the military aspect for research and development, and that we contractually agreed to store. So we've stopped that. Now, the problem is, the genie is out of the bottle. You can't put it back, and a lot of people like to say, well, pretend it didn't happen. But 19% of the electrical energy in America is generated from reactors, nuclear reactors. So there's not enough hydropower, and we don't want to burn any more fossil fuels and have the greenhouse effect in the outer atmosphere. So what we have to do as citizens is devise the technical means of preparing this material for storage and then selecting a methodology by which it can be stored in a safe place, whether that be Yucca Mountain, the salt caverns in Carlsbad, New Mexico. We're working on it, but if I took any more time, why, I probably would not give the people any more illumination of the issue. We're working on it. We have not resolved it, but I can guarantee you that Idaho will not be the dump.
Thank you. Jenny Elberg.
In your public service at the national level, you are very involved with natural resources, and I know that's been a special interest of yours in Idaho as well. Idaho is an incredible state. It has much to offer. What do you think are the natural resources, and what is the pattern for the future? Where should we be going with our natural resources?
Well, we have those extractive type natural resources, both the temporary extraction like timber and the permanent extraction like minerals, and then the renewable like water. Water, people say, is a renewable resource, but it's finite in a given year. It depends on how much snow the good Lord stacks up in the hills for us as to how much we have. Water will be the limiting growth factor in the world, and certainly in Western America. But I think, in spite of what the doomsdayers say, there will continue to be a timber industry in the state of Idaho. But keep in mind, we're still consuming about the same amount of wood fiber as we have historically, but we're doing it with half as many employees because of automation and new technologies and computers. Yet so many people look at just the employee count and say, well, the timber industry is way down. Not so. The total consumption of wood fiber is relatively the same. It runs in Idaho from 1.6 to 1.8 billion board feet a year. So we will have an industry, but it'll be a more modern and highly technical industry with fewer mills producing about the same volume. It might fall off a little, but it will not disappear. The minerals, as I mentioned earlier on this program, I don't have a clear view of that. We need a world market quotation that makes it possible for us to do what we would like to do. Agriculture, that's, again, it's a natural resource industry. It is here. It will be here in the same magnitude it is today. The big improvement will be in the processing of those agricultural products so that they're not shipped overseas or someplace in America unprocessed. And we've got some strong success stories down in the southwestern part of this state and over in the southeast that make it possible for us to have value added to those products before they're shipped out. The B&M baked beans is just one example. So but may I add the diversity angle. If we tried to stay with just natural resources, we'd not have the growth we have. Bringing in these clean industries like Harper's here, like some of the other industries in the southern part of the state that we've been able to attract, Micron's growth, Hewlett-Packard's growth, gives us diversity to where our economy won't be tied to those natural resource industry peaks and valleys that we've had. So we're doing very, very well. But for the doomsdayers, no, natural resources will be here. Just take care of the water. That's going to be the limiting problem.
Steve Sheen.
Governor Andrus, one of the things I think that makes Idaho attractive to people from other parts of the country who may relocate here is quality of life, and a part of that is our relatively low crime rate. I know you fairly recently attended the National Governors Conference in Washington, D.C., and I would guess that that was one of the topics you discussed. Do you see anything on the national level, the President's new crime bill and other things that may be happening that will affect us here in Idaho?
We're not immune from crime here in Idaho, and as we grow, that grows also. And if you look at the number of people we have incarcerated in this state in the last 10 years over what it was today versus 10 years ago, you see that we have our share of growth. There were a lot of horror stories told at the National Governors Conference recently in Washington. The President of the United States, President Clinton, spent a lot of time at the White House in a private session with us and publicly before our forum discussing crime and what they would do nationally. They're going to throw some additional money at it, but the people, in my opinion, have to become involved and be a part of the solution. Neighborhood watch. You know, it's easy to say, but do we really have a neighborhood watch? Do the people in the community really care about what's going on? Will they watch? Will they become a part of it? The cultural changes that have taken over have not been good. Now, juvenile gangs, that's an issue that we can still nip in the bud here if we will, because basically we have a bunch of wannabes out there, not the real hardcore yet. But there has to be some firmness, and the public has to say very clearly in every neighborhood, we're not going to put up with it. And that's one of the things we do. Yes, we're going to increase the number of Idaho State police officers in this state. We're going to increase the investigators. We will continue to improve our juvenile justice system. But I have to say to you, the real answer is getting the neighborhood, the community, the people involved to working together and just say, we are not going to put up with that.
Dr. Bennett.
I want to talk to you about your old boss.
Now my wife? Or?
No.
I'll be very careful. I don't refer to her as old.
Yesterday I was watching a Good Morning show, and they had Jimmy Carter. And he's become, I think, revered by many people in the country now as a statesman. I'd like for you to comment on that a little bit, and then I want to touch on just a little piece. Now, as you're moving toward, what's a governor going to do after he gets finished? Now,
as I approach the twilight of a mediocre political career, what am I going to do?
Jimmy Carter's out building homes and so forth. I just kind of wondered if you could comment on the president, and then maybe a little bit about what you got in mind.
I don't have the financial independence that Jimmy Carter or any former president has to be able to go out and do everything pro bono, but let me speak first of Jimmy Carter. I said when we left Washington, D.C. in January of 1981 that Jimmy Carter would be judged better by historians than he was the people in that 1980 election, and that's been proven already. If you look at deficit spending of the government, you know, he did a much better job than anybody except Harry Truman, I guess, and well, 2 years of Eisenhower. But Jimmy Carter is the same man today as he's out there working in the humanities that he was as president. He didn't say one thing and live a different lifestyle. He totally honest, dedicated. World events captured his presidency in the area of OPEC oil prices and inflation and the hostage situation, but he's a totally honest, very intelligent individual who had only one thing in his mind, and it's what's best for America and the people.
It's coming across now.
Yeah, and now he is no longer in the presidency, of course, but he's living that lifestyle and saying so. Now, I appreciate your even putting me into the same level of a president of the United States. But when I'm not going to retire from active work, but I will cease to be a public official. Hopefully. Carol and I, the public knows my finances. I'm not broke, but I don't come from a rich background or a wealthy family. Carol and I have been reasonably frugal during our 44 years of marriage, and we've accumulated a little bit. But I can't sit down. I don't want to draw Social Security or state employment early. I'll be 63 years old when I retire.
Young man.
Oh, just a kid.
Just a kid. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can say that. You can say that.
Yeah, I'm getting close.
You're getting
I'm
closer.
getting close.
Yeah, but aren't we all? But I'll work probably part-time. I'll go on some boards, pick up an occasional issue that I want to be involved in. We're talking about creating an institute affiliated with an institution of higher education that would not for any remuneration for me, none. But that would give me a vehicle from which to do these things we talked about when Tony asked me the question a while ago. So we'll work part-time. Carol and I will travel a little bit. And I've, as you mentioned, I have spent more than 30 years out there trying to protect some of these natural resources. Now I'm going to start enjoying more of them with my shotgun, my bird dog, and fly rod. So that's what CSAM
Come on
is
up and we'll
do.
go horseback riding together.
Hey, that's right. Now I could bring my mule. Do you want to bring?
I was going to say,
Bring that mule.
you still have Ruthie the mule.
I bring Ruthie the mule. You see, you can get one of those cute little scars that comes down here.
For our viewers in Canada, the place don't know that when you were on a hunting trip, Ruthie, your mule, kicked you in the nose and broke your nose and stuff.
Well, yeah, she struck me. He did a pretty good job of gluing me back together, but she fractured the skull here and broke all around the right eye, and the scar comes down here like this and down into the bridge corner of my nose. And she took my nose and put it over here. And yes, she's probably the most offensive female creature that I've ever run into.
What an interesting note on which to end the program. I just received the signal, Governor, that we're out of time, and on behalf of the panel
Already?
and staff, it went so fast, and we appreciate so much your being here. You've been here on a number of occasions, I indicated at the beginning of the program, to report to the people of the state of Idaho, and we appreciate that, and we hope you'll be back during the rest of the tenure as governor.
Donnie Stewart, you have not seen the last of me.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed our program, and I'd like to invite you to be with us again next week when we will discuss what we believe to be a significant issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.